Today's video is on dividing decimals. When dividing decimals by whole numbers, you place the decimal point in the quotient directly above the decimal point in the dividend. Then divide until there's no remainder. Remember, this is your dividend, this is your divisor. You put your quotient up top. So, following these directions, we're going to place the decimal point in the quotient directly above the location of the decimal point in our dividend. Then we can divide until there's no remainder. 4 goes into 7 one time. 1 times 4 is 4. 7 minus 4 is 3. Bring down the 3. 4 goes into 33 8 times. 8 times 4 is 32. Remainder of 1. Bring down the 2. 4 goes into 12 3 times. 3 times 4 is 12. And we have no remainder. If you'll remember, you are to continue dividing. Notice how important it is to keep our columns straight. And our answer is 1 83/100. Now, be aware that when dividing decimals, or in fact whole numbers, by decimals, you multiply the divisor and the dividend by a power of 10 until the divisor is a whole number. You're going to then follow the dividing by whole number procedures. So in this scenario, we've got a decimal dividend divided by a decimal divisor. What we're going to do is change this divisor to a whole number by multiplying it by 10 and change it to 32. Because we did that, we're also going to do the same thing in the dividend and move the decimal point over 1. Then we're going to follow those same procedures as before. We're going to move the decimal point straight up, and then we can divide. Same scenario here. We're going to move the decimal point over 2 places so that now this can be a whole number. We're going to follow the same procedure over here, copying in the dividend and bringing our decimal straight up into our quotient. And in the last example, same thing. We're going to move it over 2 places. You'll notice in this case there wasn't room to move 2 places. So we place a 0 there so the decimal point can then be placed here. And then again, the decimal point can be placed up in our quotient. I'm going to do some examples to help you see. In this first example, the question would be written as 7 88/100 divided by the whole number 4. We're going to solve this by writing it in a bracket. You'll note that when I read it in the bracket, I read it the same way I read it originally. 7 88/100 divided by 4. Again, my decimal point is going to go straight up in my quotient. 4 goes into 7 one time. 1 times 4 is 4. Subtracting it 3. Bring down the 8. 4 goes into 38 9 times. 9 times 4 is 36. We subtract. And we bring down the 8. 4 goes into 28 7 times. 7 times 4 is 28. And we have no remainder. So we're done. Our answer is 1 97/100. Again, look at how straight all the columns are. And again, the decimal point came straight up into the quotient from the dividend. In this example, again, 45 3/10 divided by 15. We're going to rewrite it in the bracket. 45 3/10 divided by 15. And in this scenario, 15 we know goes into 45 3 times. 3 times 15 is 45. And we have a remainder of 0. We bring down this 3. 15 doesn't go into 3. So you want to make sure that even though 15 doesn't go into 3, we still have to answer the question and say 15 goes into 3 0 times. 0 times 15 is 0 and a remainder of 3. And at this point, and only at this point, can we then add a 0 and bring it down. 15 goes into 30 2 times. 2 times 15 is 30, and you now have no remainder. You'll note halfway through that problem, I realized I had not brought my decimal point into my quotient. It's really a good idea to do that first, just to make sure that you've got it in the right place. It would be silly to answer this question and say that 45 3/10 divided by 15 will be 302. That would be ridiculous. So we want to make sure we bring those decimal points up directly into our quotient before we solve. In this case, I'll make sure I do that. We're going to go ahead and set this problem up as 3 76/100 divided by 4/10. And just like before, we recognize we can't divide by a divisor that's a decimal. So we're going to change it into a whole number by multiplying it by 10 and multiplying our dividend by 10. Now that our dividend's got our decimal point in the correct place, we can move it directly up into our quotient and divide just like we would have otherwise. 4 goes into 3 0 times, 4 goes into 37 9 times. 9 times 4 is 36 with a difference of 1. We bring down the 6. 4 goes into 16 4 times. 4 times 4 is 16. We have no remainder, so our answer is 9 4/10. In our last example, we're going to do 294 thousandths divided by 3/10. And you'll note that when we change our divisor into a whole number by multiplying it by 10, we'll do the same thing in this one and bring that decimal point straight up. In this case, 3 goes into 2 0 times. 3 goes into 29 9 times. 9 times 3 is 27. Bring down the 2. Bring down the 4. 3 goes into 24 8 times. 8 times 3 is 24. Again, we have no remainder, and we have our final answer of 98 hundredths. Thanks for sticking around till the end.